Okay. Now let's start. Very good morning to everyone. Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone who attending this webinar, understanding the management of dangerous good logistics. My name is Dr. Muhammad Azamdin. I'm one of the academic staff at Faculty of Science, Universiti Tunku Abdul Rahman. And I'm also a chartered member with the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Today, we have gladly to bring to you a collaboration between the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, Perak Section, the Next Generation, and also the Faculty of Science, UTAR, to conduct this wonderful webinar regarding on the dangerous good logistics. So as you know, dangerous good is something that we need to know, we need to handle delicately, and then with this dangerous good, if not being handled properly, it will going to give us big mishaps, and it will give us a problem afterwards. So I will welcome you to this webinar, Understanding the Management of Dangerous Good Logistics, and I hope this webinar will benefit to all of us, the members of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and those who also, the publics who would like to know more about this element of dangerous cargoes or dangerous goods. To further initiate the event, I would like to call the chairman of the Next Generation Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport Malaysia, Mr. Suren, to give his opening remarks. So, Mr. Suren, the floor is yours.
Very morning to all, everybody. From Dr. Azam from University of UTAR Faculty of Science. Yeah, it's a very good training, apt training at the right time. You know, understanding the management of dangerous goods logistics. Many years ago, when I was attached to one power Alstom, is a power generation company. For an MNC company, safety is the utmost priority. You know, when you are handling dangerous goods, hazardous materials, you know, you need to know, you must be a competent person. You must know how to handle the hazardous materials and everything. But sad to say that most of the companies, you know, a bit fewer companies in Malaysia, what happened is they always say that it is safety. When it comes to safety, it's safety and health department's responsibility, but actually it's not. When it comes to safety or comes to handle hazardous materials, dangerous goods, it's a responsibility of everybody, being all the staff, whoever they handle. You must know do's and don'ts how to handle this particular chemicals or whichever the dangerous goods you are handling. You must know where is the safety data sheets. In case of spillage of chemicals, you must know what to do. You know, what is the other chemicals that you can use, or what, you know, all these things is everybody's responsibility. But sad to say that they always put that is actually safety and health officers' responsibility. Yeah. So this training is an awareness to everybody that it is everybody's responsibility, and I'm happy that UTAR, Faculty of Science, CILTM Perak, Next Gen, and a panel of speakers actually come up with these particular topics, the right topic at the right time. Yeah, when our country is actually going on that, you know, a lot of safety things we are actually promoting and everything. And I'm glad that CILT is part of the government initiative in actually embarking and also promoting safety in Malaysia when it comes to handling dangerous goods. Yeah. So again, once again, thanks to everybody. Thanks to all the organizers, the panel of speakers for today's wonderful session that I'm looking forward. All right. And also, I'd like to take this opportunity to share about a little bit of next generation. All right. Okay. CILT Next Generation Malaysia. The Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport established two special arms, namely Women in Logistics and Transport, WILAT, I think it's well known in Malaysia, and also Young Professional Forum. Then the CILT Young Professional, known as CILT Next Generation, is an inclusive and inspiring network of professionals globally bringing together thought leaders and future fellows to support, educate, and motivate the young minds of the institute. In 2004, the first CILT Young Members Committee was inaugurated in Hong Kong, and by 2020, the group spread across CILT branches globally. Today, the global network has more than 2,000 individuals, and now I believe that it's more than 2,000 members in over 25 countries around the world. This is our global network, where's the young professional CILT and WILATs. We are in Europe, we are in the Middle East, in Africa, America, South Asia, East Asia, Oceania, and also we are going to spread to further to other countries in Southeast Asia as well. So for Malaysia, we have our own management committee, 2021-2023, and I'm the chairman for the next gen, and also regional chairman for the Southeast Asia. And the vice chairman will be Dr. Hazaria, and the secretary, Dr. Hazam from UTAR, and the rest of the people. So it's a combination from the industry and also academician. The objective of the next gen is support the future fellows, thought leaders, and contributors to our institute and profession. Create a succession plan for young members that will become leaders in the industry. Promote active participation of young professionals in the institute. Sustain strong links with local, regional, and international young professionals. Encouraging professional development through mentoring and other networking functions. Seek reward of excellence, creativity, and talent among the young professionals. So the member benefit, all the young professionals, whoever the members of CILT, they receive updates on next-gen activities and active participate in next-gen WILAT events at national, regional, and also international functions. Meet and connect with young professionals across the globe. International exchange of knowledge and networking. Industry exposure through networking functions. Peer-to-peer support, mentoring connection. Be mentored by industry leaders, experts, and researchers. Sharing global best practice, personal and career growth, secure internship in your core industry and leadership programs. So for that, we have two target groups or two focus groups. One is the students, another one is young professional. So in 2021, we have established Next Gen Club, transition from student to young professional, where 19 graduates from 15 learning institutions, those who received Best Student Awards during the CILT convocation, was directly elected to be the members of Next Gen Club. The purpose of this club is to create awareness of the studies. Current students pursue their studies under CILTM academic programs, become the CILT members, and foster active participation of this young professional in the institute. So this is a list of the students, yeah. And then we have actually a framework, transition from students, from training, mentoring, grooming, networking, and empowering. So by the time they graduate, when they become a young professional, they're going to go and work and everything. They have enough knowledge to be the competent young professional. It's no longer like those days. Those people, they say that after work, they can actually gain experience. It's too late. So what we at CILT, we are doing, before even you graduate, we want to make sure that you have enough knowledge, yeah, you become a competent person where you face the industry. So this is the objective of Next Gen Club. Actually, literally, it's actually we want to have engagement, mentor, mentee, best sharing, knowledge sharing. You have enough knowledge, upskilling and reskilling before you actually face the real industry. So then, moving forward, we also focus on young professional, caters to the professional development of recent graduate and also early career professional. As long as you're below 40 years old, you are actually category under young professional. So we expose members and prospective members to the new and unique career opportunities, workshop, seminars, networking events, career and development. This is not only in Malaysia, but we expose to international level, right? And we also have series of webinars for upskilling and reskilling. This is, I think, the previous one, but what Reshma have done, yeah, in the collaboration with CILT, Mitran, Spotclanks, and awareness of shipping dangerous good cargoes by sea. And so we also have lists of webinars which will be benefit all the young professionals. Yeah. So then we have networking and knowledge sharing. Yearly National Logistics and Transport Symposium, where you meet a lot of people from the industry, best practice. When you learn best practice, you share your knowledge, you learn from others. We might think that what we are doing here is the best, but we might, when we listen from the Southeast Asia or Australia or UK or Ireland, that, wow, this is something that I actually can adapt in my organization. Yeah. So we create that platform for you all. Road to CMILT. So we want to make sure that one day you will become a charter member and fellow chartered, because when you carry the charter member, that shows that you are a competent person in your job. That means you have all the expertise to handle or to conduct your work. Establish cross-cultural networking session, international webinars and innovation workshop, next generation international conference and young achiever award, global membership, mentoring programs, leadership courses and training. And then we have career development, where we have peer support, mentoring, connection. Be mentored by industry leaders, experts and researchers. Mentor and mentees connect based on it, and also internship. All right. So we are looking forward, those people, those today's participants, those who are part of the CILT, we are happy. Those who are actually, we are looking at our future members. There's a lot of members, but you are being a members in the CILT and also Next Gen. So grab the opportunity, please contact Dr. Azhar from UTAR to be how to be a member and what is the benefit that you can actually gain by being a CILT members, and then how to actually for you to have this professional membership, because professional membership is very important for you to climb your ladder, career ladder, because every particular job, being supply chain, warehouse, shipping and everything, we do have a competency framework for each particular profile. So each profile, from operational, from managerial to strategic, if you want to move the ladder, professional membership is one of the most important criteria, which is, I think the government is actually looking into it. So hopefully you all can actually grab the opportunity being a CILT members and enjoy the benefits that CILT is providing. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, Dr. Azhar. Yeah, thank you so much again once again for the opportunity to present about Next Gen, also the CILT.
Okay, I think thank you very much, Mr. Suren, our chairman for the CILTM next generation. So as you know, the next generation is catered for the young bloods that are going to become the future leaders of the logistic industry. So before we proceed further, let's have a photo session with all the panelists, and then let's have all the panelists to switch on their camera so we can have a photo session. So ready? So we take one pictures. Okay, let's do one more time. Ready? One, smile, 1, 2, 3. Okay, right. So to move further, I would like to call Miss Lee Pei Fan from UTAR to moderate the event and then to move on further with our webinar. So Miss Lee Pei Fan is one of the graduates from the Bachelor of Science, Logistics and International Shipping at Faculty of Science, Universiti Tunku Abdul Rahman, Kampar Campus. She is now currently conducting her master degree at the Faculty of Science. And she is also our MILT member with the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Ms. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Azam. Good morning, everyone. I agree so much that safety is the utmost concern, whether in the industry or everywhere, okay? Now, dangerous goods are in fact disastrous in nature, and they are in fact should be highly regulated. However, accidents, and they are major accidents such as explosions or fire, they occur over the time because of the mishandling or even improper documentation of these dangerous goods. Therefore, knowledge and understanding in the proper handling of dangerous goods is very important. So we are very honored and delighted to have Ms. Reshma Yousuf, a council member of CILTM, and also the founder of CLLB Sendiri and Berhad, which is a reputable and very prestigious training and consultancy provider in logistics and supply chain in Malaysia. We have to also note that Ms. Reshma is a certified dangerous goods safety advisor, United Kingdom, International Maritime Organization certified trainer, and also an approved trainer by the Malaysian Marine Department for the mandatory certification and training on the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Codes. So in this webinar, Ms. Reshma is going to discuss about the classification of dangerous goods regulations, and the proper handling, management, storage, and distribution of dangerous goods. And she will also share with us some of the friendly approaches and new development in dangerous cargoes issues. Now, we would also like to remind participants to kindly sign in with the form provided in the chat box. And then also, if you have any questions or if you would like to share a thought, you may do so using the chat box, and we shall direct all the relevant questions to our speaker, Ms. Reshma, at the end of the webinar. Now, let us invite Ms. Reshma to begin her sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. I'm very obliged. Thank you so much. In fact, the bio data that you read for me, wow, I felt pretty puffed up. Thank you very much. I'd like to especially thank Universiti of Tunku Abdul Rahman Faculty of Science for inviting me today, CILT, Malaysia, Perak Section, and of course, NextGen for having me here today on a Saturday morning, very cool Saturday morning, to talk about something that's rather serious. Now, I'm pretty much of a whimsical character. So as I take you through my presentation to talk about something that's very serious, it is a very serious thing, I'll add a little bit of humor in it, right? Just to keep us all entertained. But I'd like to actually resonate what our chairperson has just said for NextGen, Mr. Surin. He said some really wonderful golden nuggets. And one of those golden nuggets that I'm going to pick from him would be that the management on the safety of these dangerous goods. Yes, of course, there are responsibilities that are laid out, which I will take you through in my presentation. But it really boils down to you as a person, you know, on a personal level, because I think now all of us are no longer dreaming about climate change. You know, like some of us, there are people who think that, nah, it's probably a hoax. I think now it's not a hoax anymore. Now all of us can see that it is a serious issue. So it's when you manage these goods, as I run through the slides, you will notice that how this is interrelated on a personal level to the person itself. So I like that nugget that he gave, that it's a personal responsibility, don't always look at it as only a corporate responsibility. So allow me to share my slides. Hold on. Just want to check and see whether everyone can see the slides. Are the slides visible to all of you? Yeah, right. And you can hear me, right? So first thing what I did was, Ms. Lee was so kind. She gave you a wonderful outline of me. But if you want to know a little bit more and you want to contact us, because yeah, we do conduct the mandatory training for the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code, but we're also working together on various other rules and regulations that have not very much been adopted here. And we're doing this through a professional qualifications through our charter. So as Mr. Surin had told you, you know, it's like CILT, but like a universe on our own, because we have various, I would say, councils that take care of various areas of interest within our huge universe of logistics and SEM, if you get what I mean. So you can scan that QR code if you want to learn more and you want to contact me. My email address is there as well. So let me get started with what I'm going to cover. And I'm going to try and keep it short because I'm a trainer and I don't want to get lost. You know how trainers and lecturers are. We tend to get lost and go on and on and on. All right. So I'm going to cap it to 45 minutes. Max, it will hit 60 minutes. Okay. I'll try to cap it at 45 and keep you riveted. We'll start with simple stuff. Simple stuff like everyone wants to know what are dangerous goods. And honestly, I'll explain to you the why of the definition as well, because you get these formal definitions that don't really explain the why to you. Missing link in knowledge, right? So that, and then after that, they're dangerous once we establish what their potential harms are and why they are that way. we also need to understand when something is so dangerous and so harmful, why is it that we need this stuff? Why can we not do without it? Like, forget it. It's so dangerous. It's going to harm everyone. Let's forget about it. So why do we need it? And Malaysia needs it. If we say forget it, finish for us, we can tutup kedai for the country. Okay, I'll explain, because we have two huge products that we produce that are related to dangerous goods, very much so. So why do we need them? How do they normally move? All right, so because when dangerous goods move, a large proportion of this are pretty much like work in progress inventory. That means they're going to another manufacturer to be processed. So they go in large quantities. But now also, because we have a lot of smart devices, our cars have become smart, also electric and all that. So we're using our dependence on batteries. Lithium batteries are also pretty high. So you can see consumer products. And if you really take a close look at my hair, I did not touch up the dye. Now that is a consumer product that's DG2. So how do these ones move? So you need to understand how they move, because different volumes, different types move in different ways, okay? And who's responsible on the safety of it? The person who manufactured and shipped it, obviously, but who else? You know, we need to also understand, because here is where the insurance, the marine insurance comes in. The shipper, like all of you probably are from, you know, logistics, supply chain, so you understand when I say the shipper will purchase marine insurance to cover their risk, right? And when the cargo is risky, more risk, right, associated to it, their insurance cover will be higher for the cargo itself. But the person who's actually accepting the cargo on behalf of the manufacturer, shipper, so to speak, now they have insurances too. What's that, and how does it play a role, in a sense that why is it so important that people who are managing the physical movement of these goods be competent and compliant to the rules and regulations that ensure that these goods move safely? So we'll touch that, yeah. And how do we move them safely? So here, the how do we move them, I'm going to touch on provision, codes and guidelines. So we've got the UN, and the UN's done a lot of work. So we're going to look at internationally what the UN has done. Why did they do it? What's the basis of them doing it this way? And how are these things being adopted? We'll look at our country, these international guidelines. How far have we put them? In which part have we actually inserted them into our local acts? And finally, how do we store and handle dangerous goods? Okay, so it's a fair bit, but let's zip through. So when you come to the definition of dangerous goods, when someone says, what are dangerous goods? Always, trust me, you're going to get this like formal definition that says the dangerous goods are substances, generally chemicals. That means they come in three forms, right? Solid, liquid, gas, yeah. And articles. So articles are generally equipment or machinery that pretty much are powered by these substances, these chemicals that get into them. So the formal definition goes like this, lah. I put pictures there for you all, but it says this: dangerous goods are substances and articles that have the potential of harming lives. So they can do potentially any of these things that you see on the screen, all right? They can destroy property. And honestly, for marine transportation, 2019, 2020, even during the pandemic, we had some massive disasters. The most recent was Express Pearl. If any of you have been following that story, it's a horrible devastation that has affected the marine life there for the next 30 years because of microplastics. It's, right? And when they say stuff like this in the definition of dangerous goods, destroying property, harming your lives, and causing massive danger to our environment, they fail to explain to you why does it do that. They're just telling you what happens. That means the puncha, they're not telling you the source, the puncha, they're just telling you the outcome. That dangerous goods are substances and articles that have a potential of doing these things to the environment, to people, and to things. But why do they do that? And here I'm speaking to the Faculty of Science. So you guys are the pro in these areas. Now, the reason why they do this is simply because these substances are unstable and they are highly reactive. Unstable in a sense, some have a potential very high content of toxicity. Why do we need this? Simple substance that we use to sanitize our water, as an antibacterial for our water, right? So there are so many things like chlorine. Now that's dangerous, but it's poisonous. Yeah. So the reason is it's highly reactive, right? And it's unstable. So knowing that it's highly reactive and unstable has this crazy potential of doing nasty harm in every essence. And honestly, when it harms the environment, it's not like a immediate kind of a solution. Yeah, that thing takes like a lifetime for things to get sorted out. Yeah. And so why do we need this? So guess why we need it? Because, my dear friends, take a look at our poor planet Earth right there in my picture. Because we have done this, my friends, we have plundered and pillaged the planet of all of its natural resources. We pretty much have very little. Of course, there's the whole fight of lithium taking place currently, you all know. Yeah, but depletion of natural resources has led us to a dependence on chemical substitutes. And the way our lives are generally, a lot of things now, like, look very pretty. Vegetables look very chante. Yeah, things also look very nice, and you get virtually everything that you need. And most of all of this comes from chemicals. So our dependence on chemical substitutes have increased so much that if we do not move these chemicals, then the world economy will go flat. Seriously. All right. So it is that necessary in our lives. Malaysia is a producer of petroleum. Petroleum itself is DG. But when you process it, you go downstream, it still is DG. It keeps going downstream, it becomes chemicals, right? And can turn into gases, right? And let's look at palm oil, same thing, right? So we do produce these two natural resources in our country, along with the gases and whatnot, and these are construed as DG. So actually, Malaysia is a pretty sizable producer of these kind of things. Chemicals are used in virtually everywhere in our modern lives. In our food, from every flavoring that you have, it comes out from a fragrance factory somewhere in Kuantan, okay, in Gebeng. So your food fragrances, colors, flavors, dangerous goods, okay, it's our food. It's in our food chain. For farming, you need pesticides, insecticides, genetic modified organisms, DG, all right? It's in our homes. And thanks to COVID-19, it's in our handbag too. Meaning I have a sanitizer all the time on me, right? So it's everywhere, it's part of our lives. And it is even in our medical, which is very important currently, which is like the highlight of what's happening in the world. So it's virtually everywhere in our lives. It's something that we cannot say, oh no, it's so dangerous, let's stop. So recognizing its importance in our lives, right? We must understand how do these goods move first to understand which modes move them. But before we start talking about which mode takes how much and what not, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a background, a historical, tiny historical background on dangerous goods transport regulation. So you'd be surprised that the oldest transportation regulation related to dangerous goods began in 1893. For what mode? Rail transport. That's the oldest. But remember now, this is pre-UN period, yeah? When the United Nations was established in 1945, at that period of time, one of the things they did, they established the Economic and Social Council. The Economic and Social Council had created a group, they call this the United Nations Committee of Experts. I love calling them the Committee of Sifus, because these guys are the brain box behind DG. So the committee of experts on the transport of dangerous goods. So these guys established themselves in 1956. And when they said that when we transport dangerous goods, we need to ensure that these dangerous goods are identified, classified, marked and labeled and communicated, right? So identified and classified. How do you identify and classify? Then they came up with, because you know, standard science, right? You have your solid, liquid, gas, then you look at all these potential hazard properties like explosiveness and flammability and toxicity and carcinogenic, that's a health hazard, corrosive, radioactive. You take all of this and they gave it a numbering system for it. They put all these hazards into numbers, like they gave it, okay, class 1, anything that has a potential of exploding, they put it in class 1. So these guys came up with the test mechanisms. How do you actually conduct this test to establish that something can explode or to establish that something is toxic or corrosive or what have you? They came up with the standard test procedures. They came up with a classification system and they gave it names. They call these proper shipping names for these products. Okay, these are like transport names. Some of them are the chemical names itself. Some of them are generic names. But each of these names were given a unique identification number. And this was done by the UN Committee of Experts all the way in 1956. For the transport of dangerous goods by sea, before UN, of course, it was way back in the time of, you know, SOLAS. That was even before UN. SOLAS is a mechanism. It's called Safety of Life at Sea. It's a convention related to Titanic that sank, remember, that brought about SOLAS. So SOLAS had already recognized carriage of dangerous goods, but the code related to it only was developed when the International Maritime Organization was established. And then they came up with the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code, sort of like my sort of like Bible, so to speak. I love that code book, okay? Honestly, I'll tell you, but I've read all the codes. Some are better than the other in some aspects and whatnot. In 1968 came the road transport of dangerous goods. So when it came about in 1968, the United Nations body that developed it was UNECE, UN Economic Commissions of Europe. So at that point of time, it was pretty much only in the Europe. So they were calling it the European Agreement. In fact, it's all in French. That word ADR is an acronym for a very, I doubly pronounce French words, okay? But now they have removed that European story out of it because now a bunch of Asian countries have already adopted ADR along with some African countries apart from Europe. And we meaning CILT Malaysia, we're working together with MOT on seeing how to best adopt ADR in Malaysia. So let's give you a heads up on this. All right, and the evolution of this regulations. So the first one was the sea regulation when it came to international movement of dangerous goods regulations, and then came the air transport. The air transport under the aviation agency for UN, they are known as ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. But around the world, everybody is using the IATA. All right, the IATA is an International Air Transport Association, and they have been accepted by ICAO, and everybody uses the IATA manual, which is super duper. In my opinion, it is super duper manual. Okay. And funny thing about road is it's a pain, okay? So now we've had Brexit also that happened in the Europe. So sometimes when you move road transport from say the UK and it's moving up to Europe, even your tank hazard identification numbers will differ. So you have that. And then don't talk about the US, CFR 49 is another different story. So with road transportation, it seems to be a challenge, and let's see how UN works on this. UN is trying very hard, and let's see how UN, for Australia has its own rules, but it's aligned to the ADR, all right? However, different countries. Like in Malaysia, we have for tank transport, road tankers for petroleum, explosives, and radioactives. But for your normal package truck or your container, we don't really have a rule for them yet in place. Right. So let's talk about the modes that these goods move in. Air transportation has a lot of limitation when it comes to extremely dangerous goods. I don't know whether you've been following news about lithium batteries exploding, right, in the aircraft, to the point that a whole bunch of airlines now do not even want to accept lithium cargo in the aircraft anymore. So it's quite limited in terms of what travels by air when it comes to DG. And honestly, a large proportion, like if we take all the DG that moves, 80%, I always like the Pareto rule, 80% of it are substances that are going as work in progress inventory. So they will travel in huge quantities, right? And guess huge quantities move by the biggest monsters on the ocean, our ships. So our ships, I always say our poor vessels and our crew, because the captain and the crew have no idea what the shipper has packed in the container. And if you look at how many containers are on a ship, it's scary. I mean, their lives are at stake as well. So large quantities move by sea and large amounts of problems occur here in the ocean transport sector. Everybody's trying to cut costs. Sometimes they don't declare the DG. More, they won't declare it. Other times they would change its hazard level, because we have something called a packing group concept. So there are three levels of it. They'll reduce the level. That means they will play around with the safety data sheet to change information there. Or they will not even use the proper packaging, knowing that these goods are highly reactive and unstable. Like for instance, strong acids. So the questions about Express Pearl was it in a UN approved package? Was that UN approved package still valid? Was it packed in plastics? Because now plastics have got a 2-year life cycle packaging. So these kind of things, if you poorly pack this, it will leak. If it leaks, there you go, you're asking for problem only. All right, so large volumes move. And of course, in order to facilitate from the factory to the ship, the land transport is your massive connector. So for some reason, it feels like land has been lost in the whole plot of managing dangerous goods. Because if you take a look at the big picture, especially here at home, we are very, very strong in enforcing by air, because of course air has no tolerance. And then comes ocean. And then ocean also international, yeah. When it comes regional, East Malaysia, all I've actually heard people telling me, oh no, when it goes to Sabah, Sarawak, we don't declare DG. Like as though suddenly the DG cargo became non-DG when it went to East Malaysia. That kind of stuff takes place, which is, in my opinion, totally crazy, yeah. So, I mean, these are the kind of hazards that can occur. I'm not going to repeat them, you can read them, yeah. So who's responsible? The major responsibility, if I show you this, you can see that the weight of the responsibility relies on the person who has manufactured the product, because only a company will not produce a product unless there was a commercial interest in it, right? So if you are going to manufacture, obviously you are going to sell it to someone. And if you're going to sell it to someone, obviously you're going to transport, which means you're going to need logistics to move it. So you must make sure, Mr. or Miss Manufacturer, that the goods have been classified, has been packaged, marked, labeled, and documented. Now, another thing I notice in our country, when it's a domestic movement, they won't bother. As though the lives of Malaysians don't matter. Because imagine a truck driving in front of you, having drums filled up with acid, unmarked, unpackaged in the proper packaging. All right. it gets into an accident, it spills on the road, you don't know what it is, you happily get out of your car and it's hydrochloric acid. You guess what will happen. So notwithstanding, there is also the aspect of when the goods are being moved out of the manufacturer's premise, the shipper's premise, and then onward towards the recipient, the buyer. So there's going to be a whole bunch of processes and multiple handlings and multiple parties. Now, these parties that are involved in the transport chain cannot escape by saying, oh, no, the responsibility is the shipper's responsibility. If they didn't package properly, if they didn't mark and label, I cannot be held responsible. No, that doesn't happen here. Now, when a service provider goes and accepts dangerous goods, they must be competent. That means you cannot now turn around tomorrow when, say, a container reaches a port and it's leaking and there's DG in it and say someone got hurt. You cannot, as a service provider, turn around and say now that I don't know. Because when you accepted, you had the legal liability, that's a responsibility because you're liable to everybody else's goods. When you accept it, you have to make sure that the shipper is compliant. If you accept it when the shipper is not in compliance, then you are also not in compliance. So you need to know stuff. All right, so don't think that it's only the shipper's responsibility. So how does the shipper do this? Remember, I said the UN system. The UN system came up with the identification. That means they gave you standard procedures to test in the lab, to identify based on your physical solid, liquid, gas, and then classify using the classification system, and then communicating. Now, when the communication comes in, is where the story becomes a little bit weird. Not weird, it's just that people have a tendency of getting a bit confused, but I'm going to try and clear that confusion today, okay? Assuming if you are one of those, right? So the shipper's responsibility, identify, classify, following the classification system. When you communicate, that means once you have classified, you've already identified its name and its UN number in order for you to communicate in a safety data sheet. You have to package. These are UN approved packages. You see the symbol there. You have to mark and label it. So there is a specific format for marking and labeling. Why do we have specific format? Nobody has time in the transport chain to sit and turn a package around just to be able to read it. They should be able to read the thing and know what it is, right? Placard, because when you put it in a transport unit like a container, it is not transparent, so tanampa. So you must make sure whatever you symbol on the box, you stick bigger versions that are called placards on the sides of the transport unit so that everyone is warned about what is in that unit. And then declare. Why? Because carriers, the main carriers that are moving it from point A to point B, they have no idea what is packed in the transport unit. So you have to declare it to them so that they can make stowage decisions on their means of transport, how to store it, where to store it. Okay? The shipper, so this is where I say you have the UN Committee of Experts, and you know their book is called the Orange Book, Recommendation on the Transport of Dangerous Goods. Then we love colors, okay? There is another book called the Purple Book. Take a look at this. This is purple in color, so it's called a Purple Book. Now, the Purple Book is what manufacturers would use. It's called the Global Harmonized Systems, also designed by a UN agency, and they all talk together. They don't talk differently. So when it comes to identification and classification, it's not going to sing a different story. It'll be the same thing. In Malaysia, we use this ICOP, Industry Code of Practices. So this ICOP is actually the same thing. The classification is the same for both these books. The label differs because this Purple Book is for the manufacturers. They will stick these labels. You will see them on safety data sheet. But when you transport, sorry, I move up a bit, you have to use these labels. Not this, this is Australia, these ones. See, there's a little slight difference now. Australia for road transport. I don't want to confuse you now. You come for the training, then I will enlighten you because it's never enough in the short sessions. So the Orange Book, they are the CIFUs who develop. All these other modes like air, sea, road, rail, all of them will speak the same story. So I always, when I joke with my participants, I always tell them the dangerous goods that has a UN number and a proper shipping name, when it moves by air or when it moves by sea or when it moves by road, or even say you put it in your in a bottle like this and you put it in your handbag and you carry it with you, it's never going to change. Meaning it's always going to be that good. So it's like you take a flight, you are still you. I'm Reshma when I take a plane or I take a ship or I take a train, right? I don't become somebody else. So it's the same thing. So the identification, classification is common among all. The packaging is common among all. The labeling is common with slight variations for air, because air, you have passenger aircraft and then you have cargo aircraft. And then air is super stringent, so the packaging will be a little bit more insane, a little bit more stringent compared to, say, ocean or rail or road. So these UN international regulations, these regulations like the IMDG, the IATA, the ADR, and various others, because UN keeps coming up with new ones to help us out with. Now, these international rules and regulations get adopted in our country through certain national laws, yeah, Parliament Acts, where we have, for instance, for ocean, it is part of the Malaysian Shipping Ordinance. You will see it there. So for air, you will see under the Aviation Act. So you can see all of this within our various MOT agencies and acts related to that mode of transport. When it comes to identification and classification, now that goes under a separate agency, right? Under DOSH and various other agencies, depending, like Department of Environment also will get involved, depending on what exactly is that dangerous goods. Right, so this is the UN model, this is the Orange Book and the Purple Book, just to explain that little bit to you. And what UN does generally, okay, they elaborate recommendation addressed to all governments and international organizations concerned with the safe transport of DG, allowing the uniform development of national and international regulations governing the various modes of transport. The UN recommendations come in and help out. Okay, it contains classification, identification of DG, packing conditions, labeling, marking, and placarding, and documentation. And it's applicable to all modes. So that document will be the same document that we use by road, by rail, by air, by sea, multimodal dangerous goods declaration form. Only by road and by sea, there is another thing, you need a certificate, a packing certificate, right? So that's more of a surveyor's requirement. So these are the codes. This is for ocean, this is your air, this is your rail, and this is your road. Okay, the different codes for the different modes. And in Malaysia, like when it comes for international transport by sea, the national competent authority, that means the body, the local body in Malaysia that is the liaisons with the United Nations Agency for Ocean is our Jabatan Laut Malaysia, Malaysian Marine Department. And of course, for air is the Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia, CAM. Yeah, and of course, for road is our Land and Logistics and Land Unit, JPG. For transport by road and rail, we have this, you see this, kaedah kenderaan motor, pembinaan dan penggunaan kenderaan membawa barangan bahaya. So it's pembinaan. It's more on pembinaan, if you catch my drift. So it's more on the engineering of the truck. It refers to the ADR, it refers to the UNEC guidelines when it comes to dangerous goods, but it does not go deeper into it. Because if you look at the ADR, the ADR will start with the shipper's perspective, just like any other code. It'll first start with the shipper, because you as in the transport chain, the shipper must do a bunch of stuff first. All right, so it'll first focus on the shipper. Then it goes on the vehicle, the construction and testing of the vehicle. Then it goes on the training for drivers and vehicle crew. So you say training for drivers, vehicle crew, transport planners, and there's an additional requirement under ADR called dangerous goods safety advisor. What Miss Lee said that I had, she said I am a DGSA UK. The reason, actually UK means because I did it in the UK. Why I didn't do in Malaysia? We don't have ADR in Malaysia. So once Malaysia adopts ADR, then DGSA will come in. So currently we have a gap there. That's like a, so while the ministry is coming up with the rules and regulations, yeah, that means taking the ADR, adapting it, looking at our local laws, what do we have, can we take this, throw this out, add this in, give this kind of exemption, they call derogation. So whilst they are doing it, one thing great that has happened, and thanks to Mr. Suren because he's helped a lot in this. One of the great things is that has happened is now the Ministry of Transport has told the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport to champion this thing, which is the driver's training for dangerous goods, which we don't have. And that's a sad thing. It has to happen eventually on a regulation perspective, because currently our Malaysian truck drivers, they cannot drive to Singapore or to Thailand because we don't have DG driver's license for them. Whereas Thailand, believe you me, has already adopted the ADR, and so has Singapore, because this is being adopted on the ASEAN level under the AFAF GIT. Okay, so already under ASEAN facilitation for goods in transit, these countries and some others are coming in like Vietnam. So Malaysia, like especially Semenanjung, is like a gap in between in that entire ASEAN pathway, roadway. So we got to quickly get ourselves ready in this. When it comes to storage and distribution, so we have this guidelines on the storage of hazardous chemicals. This is developed by DOSH. And honestly, this works very much for companies that are manufacturing dangerous goods and then storing it as part of their inventory. Not so much for the third-party logistics service provider. Because for a third-party logistics provider, it's like a chicken and egg situation. You know, you must have your facility ready, then only you can accept the cargo. So the rules here goes on the premise that you already know the cargo, and hence you prepare for that. So you can adopt this. There is room for development in terms of this rule itself for the third party. And this is something that we really need in Malaysia. We are a dangerous goods hub we're a chemical hub if you really look at it. So we have a massive potential to position the country as a dangerous goods logistics hub. When you call yourself a dangerous goods logistics hub, you must have everything properly organized and in place. That means your road transport, your people, your workers, and you must have a rule for your service providers, which will go on the basis of them first deciding what kinds of classes of DG am I willing to store, and then use the guide of this book to help them develop their storage facilities. All right, so part of it, when you handle and store DG, and Mr. Suren also said, right, safety data sheet. Now, safety data sheet is so important. In fact, this is the qualifier of DG. The sad thing about it is ICOP has got, that means DOSH has got a registrar. Actually, there's a portal in DOSH where all the Malaysian manufacturers of dangerous goods have been asked to take their SDSs and put it inside that like a repository. Apparently, what I understand from DOSH is that's not being done. They only have like 10 or 15% of what they should have. So number one, that thing. So authenticity becomes a problem. You know, like when you don't have a repository where you can have that you know, sense of assuredness that it is a legitimate document and it has not been, you know, fooled around with in terms of its information, it is so much better in terms of safety compliance in the country. So at this point of time, we don't have that. On top of that, when manufacturers do prepare their SDSs, the authority doesn't really check and see. Right? There's nobody like, okay, ni betul chop, boleh pakai. It doesn't happen that way. So there's a lot of like freedom to play around with the information, knowing that this is such an important document, because this is like the birth certificate of the DG cargo. It apart from handling and storage, it gives you so much of information. When you spill, what do you have to do? What are the environmental concerns? If you're exposed to it, how do you handle the first aid? If it catches fire, what is it? What are its ecological? What are its toxicological information? So it's loads of information in this. And if we don't have a proper control on it, it will be an issue, because economy is tough now, and people are going to look at how they're going to cut costs. And scary is when they start cutting costs in things like this, because it is penny wise, pound foolish, in my opinion. Right? The insurers are not going to be happy to insure you after that. When you have a DG warehouse, layout is very important. So there are horror stories about company somewhere around here. I'm not going to say exactly where, so I'll say the state of Selangor has got a company storing ammonium nitrate in quantities that it shouldn't be storing it in, and having a haulage maintenance yard right next to it. To me, it is like something will happen at some point. And at that quantity of ammonium nitrate, it could reverberate. Yeah, so scary things. We need to seriously look if we want to position ourselves where we do have a potential, and massive potential too. Malaysia has as a DG logistics hub. But in order to do that, we seriously have to take this, make it an important thing. Another thing is segregation, because when you know these dangerous goods are incompatible, they are unstable and stuff, most times they don't get along with each other. They're incompatible, meaning the chemical reaction starts the minute you keep them together. They would start, one or the other would initiate a reaction. So the DOSH guidelines and some of the guidelines for storage, like for segregation of incompatible dangerous goods, in my honest opinion, I find the ocean one to be the best. So whenever we consult on this, because it's the best compared to all the others. So look at segregation, it's very important. Preferably follow the guidelines from the IMDG, because it's stringent enough and you can sleep at night, okay? You will not have nightmares. And I think what's very important is the shipper must make sure that their logistics partners are trained and competent in handling these goods. And of course, the shipper must be trained. The shipper cannot just say that, okay, never mind, my logistics partner can do everything. So the shipper must know, because only when you know, you will appreciate its importance. Then you must make sure that the party that's going to take your cargo is also competent to do so. All right, because it will affect your insurance. I mean, let's look at a commercial. There are a lot of risks here. Let's look at commercial risks. If anything does happen because of certain incompetence, it will affect the shipper's insurance. It will be an issue in your ISO. All right. So they must be trained and competent to manage the handling and transport of these goods following the proper compliance. And how can these gaps be achieved? So this is where I think I've poked in CILT multiple times already. So I'm coming to the end of my presentation, where here is where I tell you that we see these gaps, and being who we are, okay, because here's CILT championing the whole cause for logistics, transport, and supply chain management. So here we are looking at these gaps and coming up with real solutions for it. And our solutions will also give you this awesome value add that when you do come in and get yourself professionally qualified in our programs, like for instance, we will be starting, we've already started the professional qualifications for dangerous goods. We have for all the modes of transport, which will give you a CILT Malaysia certificate and give you membership to the charter body if you're not a member already. And we're also starting something for truckers, professional truckers training. And very soon DGSA as well will be done by CILT Malaysia, just because CILT Ireland does it for the UK, for Ireland and for Europe, and CILT Malaysia, inshallah, will be also that examination body for Malaysia, and who knows, hopefully the region. So that's my wishful thinking lah. So anyways, this is it. This is what I have for you. I hope I have not taken too much of your time and bored you with way too much detail. So over to you, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Ms. Reshma. That was very insightful. So now we have come to the Q&A session, and we have a few questions directed by the participants. Okay, there's one from Suhaimi Lai. Are all chemicals considered as dangerous goods, or only certain chemicals are dangerous goods?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What did you say again?
Are all the chemicals considered as dangerous goods, or only certain chemicals are dangerous goods?
Okay, very good question. Not all chemicals are considered dangerous goods. Only those that have a potential of exhibiting these dangerous properties, like has a potential of exploding or has a flammability rate, or for instance, if it's an environment polluted, meaning that maybe it could, pollute soil or water or whatever. But not all chemicals are. Some chemicals are not.
Okay, maybe you have any example of like chemicals which are not dangerous?
All right. Say, for example, chemicals that are not dangerous. Can we call oil a chemical? We can. Certain cooking oil, now that's not considered dangerous. All right, let's see. There are certain water-based paints, the paints that we paint our walls with, not the one which have solvent or oil in it. Yeah. So those water-based paints are also non-DG. Yeah, there are certain things. So take, for instance, I'll give you an excellent example of alcoholic beverages. How about that? Okay. Now, I'm going to give you an example of ocean freight regulation, because ocean virtually takes everything. We call ocean the dustbin. We take everything by sea. So in the ocean code regulations, generally an alcoholic beverage that has an alcohol proof of above 20%, okay? Let's take from 20 to 70% alcohol proof. Now that substance is construed as dangerous because we put it under the class called class 3, which is called flammable liquids, right? Because when it is 70% proof, like if you have anyone played the fool with empty vodka bottles would know, the vodka bottle is empty, there's a residue, you take a match, you put it in, poof, you will hear a little explosion. So it still has a flash point. However, it is not construed as DG if you pack it in a receptacle that has less than 200 liters. If you've packed it in more than 200 liters, that same thing is considered DG. Why? Because when it's in a larger quantity, if it gets caught in a situation, there's a flying flame or anything around, then it has a potential of catching fire easily and then causing an incident. All right, so this is one example where something can, a substance can be construed as DG, but also can be construed as non-DG simply because how it was packaged. Same goes with certain other goods. So things that don't have a potential of exploding or causing corrosion or burning you or causing poisoning towards you. Now, those things are not considered DG. It's easy for me to say, but there are tests that are conducted to identify. And there are levels in this test. For example, you can see that in section 9 of a safety data sheet. You can see a safety data sheet for a non-DG cargo. You compare it with the DG cargo safety data sheet, section 9. That is where they go to the lab, they test the substance to get the values. You can see the distinction there.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Reshma. We also have another question. How do we dispose used chemical containers such as the intermediate bulk container, tank, pail, and etc.? And who should be responsible for the disposal of these chemical containers? Is it a chemical supplier or the end user?
Yeah. In terms of, so when you say the end user, you've got to be specific in terms of end user. End user, you mean consumer, is it? So if you're saying consumer, isn't it already our responsibility? I get very upset, okay, every time I buy a non-DG, every time I buy a shampoo bottle, every time I buy anything, it comes in so much of plastic that I have to get rid of it. So you need to define who is the end person you're talking about. If the end person is a consumer, sadly, we are responsible. But if the end, that means, say, the shipper, the manufacturer of the goods, sold their goods in a specific packaging to another buyer who is also using it for a manufacturing process. Now, when that buyer bought it, if they bought it in an IBC, they didn't buy the IBC. The IBC, intermediate bulk container, the IBC is rented. So it's probably the liner of the IBC. So the guy who bought it, of course, it becomes their responsibility to dispose of it in the proper manner. How do they dispose? Alam Sekita, you have to go to them. All right, because these are scheduled waste, even whichever, because they have residues of DG in them. So you have to go to the accurate agency to find out the proper way to dispose. Unless the manufacturer gives you in a packaging that the manufacturer collect back. That means you use the stuff, emptied it like a drum, right? They emptied the drum and then you send the drum back to them, the manufacturer. And that drum becomes unusable. Then yeah, then that fellow's responsibility to follow their country's regulation. Because in the safety data sheet also, they tell you all that. It's within your safety data sheet.
All right, thank you very much. There's one more question also from Suhaimi Lai. So what are the rules and regulation or the laws and acts related to dangerous goods transportation on land, particularly on the road in Malaysia? And also if there are rules and regulation on the transportation of DG on land, so which government department are enforcing and regulating it?
Anything related to road rules will be JPJ, right, in our country. So it is JPJ. In fact, when before the pandemic, we meaning CILT, we had a meeting with JPJ and we met up with the engineering department first. And we asked them about their level of adoption of the ADR, which is the rule that governs road transport of DG. And they had told us that they were working on the truck first. Because if you look at the ADR, there's the truck, then there's the driver and the transport personnel and all that, and then the shipper, right? There are 3 sections of the ADR. So they were working on the truck. So at this point of time, based on our engagement with MOT, it is being led by the Logistics and Land Division of MOT. So at this point of time, the only rules we have are the rules that govern tanker transport carrying DG, like petroleum, gases, or even when we transport explosives or radioactive substances. But your normal package, like your container filled up with like say class 3, class 8, all that, that is yet not in place, not yet in place. But when you ship out by air or you ship out by sea, you have to follow these guidelines from the source of origin. That means from the manufacturer's premise So technically you're already on compliance by road. The problem is what we face, I'll be honest, there's been a couple of cases that has happened where the shipper has been in full compliance and the container is on the way to the port. Somewhere in the way to the port, the container catches fire. So what was the cause of the fire after investigation? The haulage truck, the trailer, apparently the haulage truck, the brake plate was cracked. So the driver, now a DG driver, and actually any driver, all of us also, before we go on a journey, you inspect your vehicle, and that's the first thing you do. So this guy is going to bring DG. He has not inspected his vehicle, and the road to the port is, I say, is paved with potholes. So by the thing broke, rubbed against, the spark flew, activated the very low flash point in that container, and boom. So there's a gap, but CILT is working on it.
All right, thank you. One more question is about what happens to dangerous good cargoes if it is lost at sea or it fell overboard?
So we have like a 3 months thing for it. So for instance, whenever a dangerous substance moves by sea, one of the most important things, we have these two very important rules by sea. The first is related to safety, that's SOLAS. The second rule that relates to maritime environment protection is called MARPOL. So this MARPOL rule dictates that whenever a consignment that is moved by sea, it needs to be tested whether that consignment has a potential of damaging marine and aquatic life. So there's a test on bioaccumulation, biodegradation, and stuff like that. So based on these values, the thing is then construed as a marine pollutant. So when a substance is a marine pollutant, we declare it so that the stowage planners know where to keep this, because ideally these should be kept under deck. Why? Which happens in ocean freight. Sometimes in ocean transport, you'll have nasty weather and containers will be washed off. So these marine pollutants have to be protected. Now let's talk about non-marine pollutants. So the assumption is marine pollutants don't jump into the sea, right? Because we protect it as much as we can, assuming the shipper has declared it. Now, assuming other DG falls into the sea, there is a salvage that takes place depending where that happened. Within 3 months, they will do the salvage operations. If they cannot find, they cannot find. There's a lot of trash in the ocean beds, a lot of trash, much more than on land, sadly.
Right, thank you. Another question is by Muhammad Eshan. Under port law, there is a list of dangerous goods categorized into different classes and also regrouped into 3 packing groups. So the question is that who is actually having the authority to determine the 3 packing group? Is it the Port Authority? And if yes, what is the guideline that they are referring to?
Okay, that's a really, really good question. Who asked that question again, Ms. Leek? May I know who was the person who asked it?
It's Muhammad Azan.
Okay, all right. Must be a service provider, definitely a service provider. Come for training, yeah? So I can give you a clearer. Sama laju port. Oh yeah, hi, welcome. So masuk training ya nanti sebab there is a difference between port grouping systems and packing group. All right, packing group defines the degree of danger of a specific class. Like for instance, the class 3 dictates that a substance which is in liquid form, if it has a flash point is a point where it vaporizes into a flammable gas, right? So if it has a flash point of 60 degrees and below, they grade it depending on its level of danger. There are 3 categories called packing groups. So those that are very low flash point and boiling point, they fall under high danger. So that's known as packing group 1. Those that have medium flashpoint levels, not extremely low, they go under medium danger. And similarly, those on the higher flashpoint will be minor danger. So generally what I'm trying to say is packing group is a concept that the UN Committee of Experts on the Transport of Dangerous Goods came up with when a certain class has a wide variety of products that has pretty much the same hazard qualifier, but various degrees of danger within it. So that's packing group. Now, pod grouping systems are different. Pod grouping systems, they use the same method in a sense that they also have 3 levels, group 1, group 2, group 3, where they say group 1 is high danger, group 2 is medium danger, group 3 is minor danger. But their arrangement of the grouping system is not the degree of danger of the substance, you know. It is actually their emergency preparedness. So some pods, for instance, like say Port Klang is the top pod, right, of our country. Now Port Klang will probably take a class 3 packing group 2 and probably put it under grouping pod group system 2. Okay, pod grouping system 2. But that same thing, if it goes to say KK pod, they might put it under group 1. Right? So they can change their grouping system. Why does their grouping system change? It's their capabilities. When they accept the DG, do they have the emergency preparedness to address that DG? So that's the difference. Come for training. I've done training for Samalaju also some time back. I think they have to come for a refresher. Yes, we do. I see somebody asking, do we do virtual? Now everything is online. Everything is virtual. So we do, just click on my, this, if you don't mind me sharing this, first page. Whoa, sorry, I have to go all the way up like that. But if you can click on this, oops. This QR code, you will get my email address. Just send me an email and I'll get the details sent out to you.
Hi, Ms. Reshma. There are more questions coming. So one by Hasrin Osman. How frequent is the dangerous goods regulation reviewed and changed?
It is updated every 2 years. So every 2 years, the UN Committee of Experts will sit down and they will update based on data that has been brought in by member countries for different modes. Like IMO will get all the member countries that have signed the SOLAS, if they have had any issues pertaining to the movement of DG, because sometimes a new product has been introduced to the world, right? A new DG has come in and they test it in the lab. They test it in the lab. Lab is like a controlled environment. Its quantity is little bit, and it's a controlled environment. But when you move the cargo now, you're moving it in large quantities, and the environment is so different from the lab, because you are exposed to all the stresses that are involved within transportation. So at that point of time, they might see that, oh, when we tested in the lab, it demonstrated this hazard. But when it transported, this wasn't the hazard. Something else happened that caused an accident. So that information then, after the accident investigation and all that, that comes in by whichever country that has that issue, comes into each of, like say IMO, when IMDG code was updated version 3918, I was really lucky. I was invited to attend the subcommittee meeting in London. It was an awesome experience in a sense that, when you teach the code, but here you are at the General Assembly for IMO, sitting with these so-called experts and understanding country issues and what takes place. So all of this comes in, gets updated, they publish it, and then it percolates through, like IMDG will get updated, IATA will get updated, ADR will get updated, they all get updated. So every 2 years it gets updated. And for people who are handling these dangerous goods, they have to maintain their competency. So you cannot like you come once and then sudah dah tahu semua. Every 2 years you have to come and sheep dip yourself because things change, new stuff comes in, and you need to keep yourself updated on it.
Okay, thank you. One more question by Hairul Azaman. Okay, drivers of dangerous goods, if they wish to enter Singapore, they have to comply with specifications included in the ADR. So the question is that does CILT Malaysia offer a course like this one, as like in ADR compliant vehicle?
CILT Malaysia will be launching this in time. I'm actually going to leave that to Mr. Surin to answer because he's heading this together with me. So there will be, I think by the 2nd or 3rd quarter, right, Mr. Surin? We'll be doing this. But your question on, will this be recognized in Singapore? I think that's what's more important. Will the CILT qualifications for the driver be accepted by the Singapore government? So that is going to be an issue because we will still need Malaysia to come up with the rule. It still has to be a government thing. Like CILT Singapore will accept it, and we can ask Singapore to talk to their government to accept ours as well. But it will be a CILT to CILT, yet it's going to be a government to government thing. Ultimately, Malaysia has to have the act that provides for it, because it is only going to be recognized by another government when one government has enacted something like it.
Okay, so with regards to this, Mr. Surit, would you like to add on anything?
Actually, I think we are working with various government agencies on this, still on pipeline. So we are actually working with MOT, JPK, and then KPJ and relevant agency. So I think from time to time, I think we'll have more webinar session like this to update the progress. I think that will be the right things. Right? Pretty much is actually on the government side. So we are actually assisting and supporting government's agenda. So we actually, I think, for Reshma also brought it this to during the MOT meetings for all these things. I think it's just a matter of time. So we'll hopefully something good things will happen for all of us in this country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's one more question by Pandian. How seaports handle dangerous goods? Any changes in DG regulations in Malaysian ports?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Pandian. So Mr. Pandian was formerly from LPK, and everyone who knows, no offense meant to any other port authorities here. I'm from Port Klang myself, and we have to recognize what is good lah, because LPK actually, now, as long as we all understand there's a difference between a port authority and a terminal, right? So a port authority will cover each state, there will be a state port authority, and terminals are usually private entities like Northport, Westport, and all that. So here, LPK being the main port of the country in the oldest port, LPK actually started managing dangerous goods by sea even before the regulation became mandatory worldwide. That's how long ago. So they have this super system. A super system in what they mean is, because when following the SOLAS Convention, which is the major convention when it comes to maritime safety, in Chapter 7, Regulation 4, pertaining to documentation, the SOLAS Convention clearly states that each container that has dangerous goods in it has to be accompanied with a container packing certificate. A container packing certificate is like a survey certificate. That means somebody who is competent and a responsible person, that means you've been trained and whatnot, will ensure that the shipper has been fully compliant with the rules and regulations, guidelines of the code with regards to declaring, marking, labeling, packaging, and the whole thing that, you know, is within this whole gambit of DG. So LPK controls this in a sense that even though we have a lot of people who come finish their training and all that, by right after finishing your function specific level, you should be able, that's the final level for this, you should be able to sign your container packing certificate. What LPK does is they have an additional control just to make sure that the port users know what they're doing. They make them sit for another test, which is a really tough test, and which is good. Okay, it's like case studies, and they are given a registration number. So whenever they sign that document, they indicate that registration number on their document. So whenever, say, for instance, a consignment went somewhere and there was a damage or an accident or an incident, their audit trail is very easy. It's that number, because generally the person who signs the container packing certificate takes a load of responsibility on their head. So for them to trace this, now ideally, it would be awesome if this system can be run nationwide, because the control of that container packing certificate, it's required by the SOLAS Convention. Now, Bintulu Port has started it. Bintulu Port Authority controls it. Can improve a little bit more, but they're doing an excellent job, but can replicate a little bit of LPK's, you know, the control mechanism. And most of the other ports aren't. Yeah. So if we had like a national system, like if we could just incorporate this and make it across all ports in the country, that since we are all, you know, industry 4.0 digitalization, do this lah, one portal where everything is there, and that rule is where the decision takes place, whether can ship out the cargo, cannot ship out, you know, the checking of the CPC. So I hope I've been able to answer that question, Mr. Pandian, and I think you know what I mean, what LPK system is like.
All right, thank you. I'm sure all the participants are very interested, and they have been asking one very common question. So Ms. Reshma, would you be able to share the PowerPoint slides and notes to the participants?
Definitely. I will send it to Dr. Azam, and I think Dr. Azam will then circulate it to whoever wants these the PowerPoint. No worries.
Okay. There's one more question, Ms. Reshma. Is there any significant example of the impact or consequence for not declaring dangerous goods, substances, or articles for a shipment by sea in Malaysia?
Yeah, actually there's so many, and I cannot name names, but I can give you examples, okay? One example is Malaysia produces a fair amount of this thing called calcium carbide. Calcium carbide now comes all the way from Perak, all the way from your state, okay, from where you guys are. So now, calcium carbide is it's considered a flammable solid, so it's DG, that is only dangerous when water hits it. Because the minute, this is meriam kampung, you know, if you know what the meriam kampung is, carbide. Water hits it, it releases flammable gas. So it boils down to this story where there are some shippers that when their calcium carbide movements move to European countries or Australia and all that, they declare it as DG. But there are also instances when it goes to East Malaysia, they don't. So there was this one instance, I believe, when it wasn't. And it was a transshipment ship, a vessel. It was a Maersk carrier. I remember seeing her as well in PTP. This is many, many years back, yeah. So she was actually not the mothership. She was just a feeder. She went to Penang. She went to pick up some containers. And then she came to Port Klang to pick up some containers. And then she was going to her mother port, to PTP. and discharging all these containers and going elsewhere, doing her own thing. So she was not going to go on her mother voyage with DG, right? So she was just being a tiny feeder at that moment. So here she came to Penang, and I think nobody declared this calcium carbide, and maybe the position that was available was on deck. So the containers were loaded on deck the ship, and it was during the musim hujan time, all the time raining. The ship sailed, came to Port Klang. As she was about to come to Port Klang, belum masuk lagi our waters, from a distance, the master saw smoke billowing on his ship. So couldn't address because it was right in the middle of the ship and quite a bit smoke billowing. I think rainy season, water hit the decal. Because if you don't declare DG, chances are you didn't package properly also. So maybe the water escape hit the product or what. So what they did was they didn't know it was calcium carbide. They thought something was on fire and they were worried. So they called LPK, and LPK organized planes, the jet planes, to go and drop water on the ship. So guess what? The planes went, water dropped, and as the 4th of July, it exploded. And not only did it explode, but the good thing was that ship under deck, there were portable tanks, ISO tanks filled up with carbon dioxide. So that was a lifesaver, so to speak, because when this thing exploded, the tanks heated up and they exploded. When they exploded, the carbon dioxide killed all the fire. All right, but what was left was the kera of the beautiful Kampar. And she was for a while moored in PTP. This is many years ago, yeah? Many years ago. I remember seeing that because I had some training to do at PTP, and they organized for me to see it from outside. It looks so sad. I love ships, so it was heart-wrecking to see that. In road transport, there are so many, so many. But honestly, I think this would be something that CILT Malaysia, because CILT Malaysia has through Maltrack a data center, a data repository. So through Maltrack also, we might recommend that, we can work with JPJ. We need to have data on accidents related to DG. We don't have that. We have generally accidents, right? But we don't have accidents related to DG. So I can't give a quantifiable figure of how many of these accidents are related to DG, but there are a lot. There are a lot in warehouses, on the road, and ships forever. I have so many different stories of ships catching fire, containers exploding.
All right, thank you. I think there is no further question. I would just like to remind all participants to kindly register your attendance so that we can distribute your e-certificates together with the PowerPoint slides. So is there any further question by the panelists or anyone?
Ms. Reshma, I have a
Yes.
question.
Yes.
You are an expert in this dangerous good, right? And you've been conducting training to all the participants. In your view, what are the level of understanding about dangerous good among the Malaysians?
I think compared to, because you see a large quantity of DG moves by sea, and the rules for DG only kicked in 2010. You can see the code was developed in 1965, but the code only became a mandatory regulation. Take, for example, ocean, right? The code only became a mandatory regulation for application enforcement worldwide only in 2004. And only in 2010 did they make training mandatory, because once you make the code mandatory, then you have to make sure people know how to read and apply the code. All right, so the way I see, just like everything to do with ocean is like the slow boat to China, if you've heard that term, it took a long time, but from 2010, like if I go back in time, because we were doing training on behalf, I don't know how you want to say it, for LPK before it became mandatory. So in 2008, 2009, for the port users in Port Klang. Our company was conducting the training before it became a mandatory requirement. So when it became a mandatory requirement, initially it was still not so great, but now you look at it, about 11, 12 years down the line, one of the most amazing things, I remember about 5, 6 years back, I used to say, "Ayo, why I don't have any 3PL that is specialized in DG in Malaysia, no DG warehouse." You know, like I'll have lots of clients who are manufacturers and stuff. They'll call me and ask me, "Hey, we have overspill cargo, Resh, where to put this? You got anybody's warehouse I can keep in?" So there was a massive gap, and I was like, my God, this is perfect. In fact, I used to go to my former boss and bug his life out and tell him, set up one DG center, set up one DG center, you know. But now there are 3 in Port Klang, 3 such DG logistics hubs, 3PL players. So, and the best thing is we have, we have these multinationals that drive things like Kuhn and Nagel, like Schenker and these guys. Kuhn and Nagel, road transport is not a requirement, but Kuhn and Nagel, they like have their whole team trained in this, although it is not a regulation. So we're seeing that slowly coming in, that people not waiting for government to carry the rotan and say, "Oh, come for the training." They are doing it on their own. So we're seeing that change slowly taking place. So that's good. That means people are noticing. And honestly, this is a personal thing. It must be personally vested in your view. If you understand that you mismanage this, not only are you hurting lives and damaging things, I think the worst thing is the karma of having to live with damaging the environment, because you have so many generations that you have actually done a disservice to, right? So I can see that is changing, and you can see consumers also now when they are purchasing things also, they are now very informed consumers. They want to know, when I buy this company practice, macam mana do, how are they? So you can see that. So that's changing the perception of all these.
Thank you, Ms. Reshma.
Welcome.
Okay.
Was I too fast, Miss Lee? Because I see we're supposed to finish at 12 and we still have 20 minutes. So I'm wondering, did I zippy slide through my presentation?
No, that was a good pace. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, Mr. Pandian also asked another question. All right. In Port Klang, dangerous cargoes are divided into 3 broad categories: Group 1, Group 2, and 3. So what are the current regulations on all these 3 groups?
Mr. Pandian, that you're talking about is the port grouping system. I answered that question earlier. Port grouping systems, sir, are different from your packing group system. Port grouping systems, as you know, sir, will differ from port to port. So his question was what? Why do we not use it? Or he says, wait, in Port Klang, DG cargo is every group 1. Just briefly say that the current regulations, I just want to update knowledge. Oh, it is the grouping system, Mr. Pandian, is based on the preparedness of the port in addressing any accident or incident relating to that specific class of DG. So certain ports may not have the capability to handle, like say class 1, they might say, oh, we cannot accept class 1, or we cannot accept class 7, or certain ports may say certain classes, they might put it as group 1, which is high danger, whereas in Port Klang, maybe we put it as group 2, as medium danger. Why? Because Port Klang has all the facilities. So that's the reason why grouping systems will differ from port to port. I think he wanted to understand. I looked at this question. So it's pretty much related to what was asked by our friend from the Samalaju port. Yeah, come to training. I like what I saw in the chat box. Yeah, I think another thing is people need to understand that you have to be trained. And if you're a third-party logistics provider There is no excuse for you not to have these code books and update it. Because if you are accepting DG, you must know and you must have a point of reference. If you don't have a point of reference, then how do you know you are following the rules? So this is like a mantra I keep going on and on and on and on and on about with my trainees as well. I tell them that you cannot have, it's like, you know, they'll say, oh, I have the old version of the code. So I usually will ask them a question, can you drive your car when your driver's license expires? Can you go to the cops and tell them, oh, I had, but it expired 3 years down the line? You cannot tell them that, right? So see, you have to keep yourself updated and keep a copy.
Right, thank you. Ivan Leong has a question regarding CILT membership. What's the difference between affiliate and also member in CILT membership?
I will ask Mr. Surin to answer this.
Affiliate, it will be your first stepping zone membership in CILT. So as long as you have minimum requirement and you have a little bit of working experience, you actually can apply for affiliate member. But MILT, it actually comes with your diploma or degree. That means as long as you have diploma with 5 years working experience, then you actually can apply for MILT. And then if you have degree, you actually with 3 working experience, you can actually apply for MILT. But if actually you graduate from CILT accredited learning institutes, then as long as you complete your diploma or degree, you actually will be entitled for MILT. From MILT, if you want to move forward to chartered membership, then you need to have certain working years experience. So that's actually between affiliate and MILT. That clear? All right. Maybe what we can do is I can share the slides to Dr. Azam's on the level for you to apply for in order for you to apply affiliate, what is the requirement? In order for you to apply MILT, what's the requirement? CMILT, what's the requirement? Maybe there'll be benefit to everybody to know that what's the requirement to apply to a certain level of membership. Right?
Can I add something if you don't mind? There was a question on, I think, Wan Yousuf, is it, who wanted to know the list of 3 PLs that can handle DG. We don't have a list, but I can name the 3 for you. One is Steenwich, they are in PKFZ, C Steenwich. The other one is Leshako, they're also in Port Klang. And the third one is, I keep forgetting this guy's name. It's a relatively new guy. Sorry, I can't recall his name. It's not coming to me, but there's a third. He's very new, just set up on the, yeah. But there is no repository or a knowledge, a place where you can find specifically companies that will say they are doing specialized DG.
All right, thank you. So is there any further question?
There's one from Muhammad Farid. Any example of DG substance article that totally prohibited for shipment?
There are a list actually in our dangerous goods regulations. We refer to something called a dangerous goods list. In that dangerous goods list, there's a special column called special provisions. And that column indicates, like it's called SP 900. There are certain things like ammonium nitrate. Some of these things are considered prohibited for transport. Not saying that they don't get transported, they do, but they go on unilateral or bilateral movements, G to G. But there's a list of them. There are a list of them. Ammonium nitrate on top of the list, because it's been the one that is high on potential misuse for terrorism. So yeah, there's a list.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Is there any more further questions from panelists or any participant?
Right, Miss Reshma, Carol here. Okay, I just want to get some clarification because I'm referring to the OSHA here, 1994. They stated here is a 16th component of the SDS safety data sheets. Is it the safety data sheet is a standard form or actually different? From
No,
one
it's a standard form. It comes from the global harmonized system. So the GHS, which is the purple book that I showed you, it comes from there. So the objective is to ensure that there is a uniform application in terms of the safety information in its allocated sections. So you cannot tukar the place. It has to be uniform throughout the world.
And then if, for example, like if the manufacturers has not issue for appropriate SDS, what actually, how you handle the situations?
So like, okay, we had this situation. Generally, most of the chemical manufacturers, they will have their own lab technicians, and their lab techs are registered already with Jabatan Kimia, and then they do their tests, and then they prepare the safety data sheet. Then we had this issue when suddenly the air condition guys like Daikin, because Daikin's one of the biggest guys around, and they came into the DG category simply for their large industrial air conditions, because the cooling system is more than the permitted quantity of the cooling gases. So when that happened, they were like, oh my God, you know, we can't ship out without an SDS, without a safety data sheet. So they, in the initial process, what they were doing was they would just take the safety data sheet for the gas, the cooling gas, and use that and give it to the carrier. And some carriers in the initial process were accepting it. But over time, then they actually had to come up with a real, you know, legitimate safety data sheet, a technical sheet, and a safety data sheet for the chemical, for the gas, which they have done. Generally, how you do it is, if you don't have it within your own company, there are registered labs. You take the samples, you give it to these labs, the labs will test, give you the test values. And then there are a number of people out there who actually develop safety data sheets, who do this. But you must make sure you must go to somebody who is registered with the department. Yeah, because you can get, you know, sometimes these crazy people who will say they will do it for you, but they are not registered. And then, you know, you might have some issues with it. So better go to the right party and get it done.
All right, thank you.
I think someone wanted to know, how do you become a DGSA? I saw that in the chat box. Inshallah soon, when CILT Malaysia starts running it. But at this point of time, I think the closest DGSA in terms of geography, Singapore also is not doing it. I mean, meaning they don't have the qualifications and the training for DGSA. I think the closest would probably be Australia, but that's a different rule. So that's a reason why I chose to do it in the UK, because CILT is there as well. So it's easy. Go visit CILT, do my DGSA as well.
Right, thank you. So could we have one last question before we end the webinar? Is there anyone who would like to raise a question? I think there was one question by Reshma. How do we handle pharmaceutical drugs that contain hazardous substances?
So pharma has got, of course, its own rules, right? But pharma products that fall under 6.2, which is infectious substances. Now that pretty much means that whatever that comes out of pharma has got some kind of bacteria, some sample, some clinical, there's a definition for that. So it falls under that. You still follow the dangerous regulation, but accentuating it will be under your pharmaceutical, under your MOH KKM rules. All right, so there will be rules overriding. Same goes with radioactive. You have the dangerous thing, but you still have to go to AELB, to MOSTI, and follow those rules. And because these are extremely dangerous stuff. So not everybody can handle. You have to be like, when it comes to radioactive also, you have to be an RTSO. So even for this, you need to be registered with PKM to be able to handle it. And there are GD practices. We are planning to bring GD practices here. So that's one of the qualifications for pharma and food.
Right, I think there is no further question and we could end this webinar. Thank you, Ms. Reshma, for your time and your sharing. Yeah, it's very insightful. And thank you to all the panelists and participants for joining us today. Right, thank you and take care.
Okay,
Thank you
before
very
we
much.
end,
Yes.
dear participants, before we end, just some information. Please register at the link which is given in the chat box, for that we were able to give to you we will respond to you with your e-certificates. Okay, participants, please register with the link we provided, so that we will give you the e-certificate as well as the flash slides from Ms. Reshma. And also, participants, please take note that once we receive the recording of this email, we will upload it in the CILT TV YouTube channels. Then we will give the link to you as well. So as we come to the end, we would like to thank every participants, Ms. Reshma, Mr. Suren, and also the team from UTAR, TS Cairo, and Ms. Lee Pei Fan for contributing their efforts to this event. And also thank you to CILT Malaysia office, CILT Perak and CILT Next Generation for their contribution towards this. As UTAR celebrating its 20th anniversary, we would like to promote our logistic programs to the community. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Have a
Bye,
great
everyone.
weekend. Bye. Stay safe.